When did you meet your husband?
2008 in Manhattan, Starbucks.
You were just walking into a Starbucks, having
I wish
coffee.
it was romantic like that. No.
He dragged you into, no, I'm just kidding.
He was a touring musician. He was a drummer. And I had left my industry, taken a break, and I was doing PR for bands. I was doing this is right when the internet was coming out and Google and all that. And we were doing EPK, so electronic press kits for bands. And his band had hired us to do it. And I said, I don't date clients. And he kept asking me out. I'm like, no. So his band fired my company. Yeah. And he's like, well, now you got to go out with me. So I said, give me a couple reasons why I should date you, because I was pissed. And he said, well, we both like music. And I thought, okay, all right. So we both like to text. This is back the flip phone texting. So I was like, okay. Then he goes, well, we both wear eyeliner. And I'm a product of the 80s. I'm Gen X. So guys in eyeliner, I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. And then he said, and the last one is we both love me. And I said, purely based on your narcissistic, self-absorbed attitude, you have one date. Oh. And he goes, you'll marry me. And I was like, no, I won't. Sure enough, that was it, one date. And I was hooked. And then after that, we were inseparable. Yep.
This show is sponsored by Open Recovery Addiction Help. Whether you're newly sober, in long-term sobriety, or even maybe looking to make a change in your life, Open Recovery offers 24/7 support right from your phone. It's anonymous and packed with tools to help you stay connected, stay accountable, and build the life you deserve. Download the Open Recovery Addiction Help app today and take the next step in your recovery journey. His band, was it a well-known band?
So the band he was in when I met was called the Deadlies. They were really good. Their guitar player played with Manson. Their other guitar player played with every band you can think of. Their singer was, he's signed to country now. They were going places and they had a deal on the table. And then he ended up leaving. It was a long story. He ended up leaving and they went different directions. And then he was a hired gun for a long time. So he played with different acts here and there, bigger acts.
Yeah.
And he went on tour a couple times. And then he had his own band called Crowfly, which was more like homegrown, clean cut, not as edgy as he was used to. But that was down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk us through, you said you guys were inseparable ever since.
Yeah.
Walk us through the early stages. How long until you ended up getting married?
So we met in July of 2008. We were living together by September, which is rare for me because I'm a year. You got a year to show me all your dirty secrets. Yeah. And we were all over New York, Florida, LA. We were just bouncing all around and having a great time. And then he asked me to marry him that February on Clearwater Beach with no ring, nothing. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I don't even have a ring. I'm like, who cares? We don't need a ring. Let's just get married. And we did. And from there, it was great. We moved to Miami. We lived in Miami. We traveled all around. He helped me start my company. And he was touring, doing his music thing. And he was in recovery. And then out of nowhere, go ahead.
So, wait, okay, hold on. Before we jump out of nowhere, so how long was he clean or sober for up until this point?
So he was a little different. He wasn't your 12-step guy. So he would do coke here and there, but it was never out of control. So it was a little here, a little there, a glass of wine, a glass of beer, and he could put it down. We were together like that for 6-7 years. Never a problem. Never missed anything. No DUIs, no arrests, nothing. Just normal-ish.
What was his drug of choice?
Before I met him, it was coke.
Okay.
But it was not it was manageable. He had horrendous ADD. So when he would do a line, he would come down a notch, like an Adderall. So when people say, clean isn't clean, and then I say, do you take big pharma drugs? And they say, yes. I say, you're not clean. Adderall's not clean. Paxil's not clean. Lexapro, these SSRIs have a detox to them. And that's why I get controversial with people. And I'm like, well, if you're eating sugar and drinking caffeine, don't tell me you're clean because sugar's a drug. And I kind of go back at them. But when he did a line, he was quote unquote normal. And you could have a normal conversation. So it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't off the rails. And he's a musician. They're all doing, something.
Yeah.
From there, that's when it got crazy. And it happened accidentally. So that was the unique thing. He ran into somebody who said, here's an oxy. And this is when oxy just came out. He said, I don't do opiates. What do I want a downer for? And the guy said, just takes the edge off when you play, because he's an aggressive drummer. So he did one, and he said, well, this didn't do anything. And the guy said, you got to crush it and snort it. And he did. And he went, oh, different ballgame. And he would dabble here and there, but I didn't know because I was traveling. And he wasn't nodding. He wasn't missing, anything. Everything was normal for about 2 years until they pulled it off the shelves. When the pill mills went under and it went from $3 a pill to $30 a pill, that's when he couldn't sustain because he was doing 10 pills a day. $30 habit to a $300 habit. Switched to heroin and had his first overdose in Brickell in Miami in our BMW. And I was 2 streets over and had no idea. Yep.
What year is this? When he had the overdose?
2015 was the first one, I think.
Can you walk us through what it was like experiencing your partner overdose right in front of you?
Well, so the first one, I didn't know. I didn't even know until we wrote the book in 2018 he overdosed because he kept it from me. So this is how interesting it was. This is way before Narcan was a thing. There was no Narcan. Like there was no hand-holdable Narcan. So he was in the hood in Miami and Overtown, where he shouldn't be. And he had bought drugs. He had bought heroin, nodded out. The guy that sold it to him called 911, which is rare. And he's in my book too. Jumping ahead, he ended up helping me train half of Liberty City in intervention and getting people sober. So it's a whole long, drawn-out story on the back end, but this is what prompted it. So he called 911 and saved his life. It took 3 shots of Narcan, and they were doing intravenous Narcan back then. So I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't know until the second overdose, which was the carjacking. He got carjacked in Miami in the BMW, got bumped from behind, and the guy got out and said, pull over. Give me $100 and I won't tell anybody. So he was pulling into the ATM at this little Sunoco it was a mobile on 79th Street coming out of Miami. And he doesn't remember any of it. He went in to hit the ATM and he nodded out. And the guy that owns the store called 911. So they took him to the hospital. Now I'm calling him. I can't reach him. Calling, can't reach. And that's when I'm like, oh crap, like something's wrong. So this goes like 8 hours. And then he calls me and he's like, I need you to come get me. I said, where are you? He said, I'm in a hospital. So I thought, car crash. Are you okay? Yeah, he goes, just come get me. So I get there. He's got no shirt on, no shoes, no keys. All he has is his phone, no wallet. I'm like, where is your stuff? And he goes, I have no idea. I'm like, where's the car? He goes, what car? I said, how'd you get here? He goes, I have no idea. He didn't know, he didn't remember anything. So now I'm like making him retrace his steps. And we went all the way back to 79th and he goes, I think I was here. And we walked in and the owner of the store was like, yeah, you were here. You nodded out. I called 911 and they came and got you. You parked over there. And he's like, I parked. I didn't know I was driving. So now I'm going, someone carjacked the car. So he got bumped on a carjack. So they had watched him go into the hood, buy drugs, followed him out, watched him get high and waited for him to nod out just enough to steal the car. Yeah. So it gets better. Car has low jack. So I'm on the phone with 911, calling in the low jack, find the car. Well, if you've ever had to do that, they don't give you any information because they don't want you to show up where the car is. So 3 days later, they called me and they said, we located the car, come to this spot. So we drive over and the car's there and the cops separate us instantly. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is not good. And the cop said to me, do you do heroin? I'm like, no, I get people sober for a living. He goes, do you own a gun? I said, no. I know how to use a gun, but I don't own a gun. And I said, my husband's a convicted felon. There's no guns. There's no firearms in the house. So when they separated us, they asked him the same questions. No guns, no drugs. So they give us the car back and they said they were stealing cars and they were running them through the front of jewelry stores the day before a Mercedes, brand new Mercedes went through. So they're stealing luxury cars and doing this. And I said, what did you find in the car? Just out of curiosity. And he goes, well, about 6 guns, all illegal, all numbers were shaved off, and enough heroin to kill a small tribe in Africa. And I went, okay. So long story short, we had to go testify. I didn't know who they were. So my husband went and he came back and I said, what happened? And he goes, I didn't recognize anybody. He goes, I don't know who these people are. But they had gotten arrested because the prints were everywhere, all over the cars, the guns, what have you. And I said, what was yours in the car? He goes, well, the guns were theirs. The gun conviction and the grand theft auto conviction, they earned. He goes, the heroin conviction was my gift to them. And I said, the heroin was yours. And he goes, yeah. I'm like, how? Like what? Like what? Like that was my first what, And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, after I couldn't get Oxy and then I got the story. And I'm like, are you using? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, you're getting sober. He goes, what? Now, right now, you're done. That's it. And I cut him off of everything, the cars, the money, all of it. And he could figure out a way. He would try using and then he'd get sober and we would detox and he'd do great. 6 months, he'd get a year clean and then something would happen and he'd go right back in it. And as soon as he would use at the level he stopped at. So he'd crash a car. He'd have another overdose. He overdosed 5 times and crashed 13 or 14 cars in the entire time we were together. Yeah. And blew through money like water. Yep.
Well, all right. There's a lot to digest there. Well, first off, I want my audience to hear this. I have experience with that as well. Like you just talked about, when you stop for a little bit, you pick back up. I've had relapses and you pick up right where you left off because you want to get that. Your brain is convincing you still need that to get that high.
Yeah.
Logistically, I knew in my head, well, all I really needed to do was just 1 pill instead of 5 to get high because I hadn't used in so long when in fact, your brain, your thinking just warps it. And that leads to an overdose in some cases. Kudos to you for stepping in and you're getting sober. And sometimes addicts and alcoholics, it's on their will when they want to, but we also need that push too.
Yeah.
I got intervention when I got sober. So it's amazing that you were there to, be that angel and push him in the right direction. What happened following there when you had said to him, you have to go to rehab and get clean?
Well, he didn't want to go to rehab. And
Okay.
I'm kind of the anti-rehab girl if you follow what I do, because we do a mobile rehab. We bring the detox nurse and doctor to you. So I said, I have resources. I have the top doctors, the top nurses, top sober companions. This is what I do for a living. I run Sober on Demand. I own it. We're going to do this in the house. And he looked at me sideways and I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. So he looks at me and he's like, are you fucking kidding me? I said, we're going to do this here in the living room today. And the nurse came in and he was like, motherfucker. He's like, you're not playing around. Nope. We're doing it here. That was the first detox. Now, mind you, he had a tour bus. So the second detox, I said to him, we're going to try something different. And he's like, what are we doing? And I'm like, get in the tour bus. And he's like, oh, cool. We're going to go play a couple shows. And we had lined up the Whiskey in LA on Sunset Strip to play. But we had like a 2-week window. Okay. That'll take us a week to get there. I got a week to detox. We got as far as Alabama and he started throwing up. And he's like, I don't have any stuff. And I'm like, you're right. I have Suboxone. And he just looked at me and he's like, where are we headed? I said, we're going to LA. You got a whiskey show. He's like, we're playing whiskey? I'm like, oh, the band is flying out. Like the whole thing he didn't know. And he's just looking at me and he's like, I'm 2 days into a detox and I got a show in a week. I'm like, yep. And that was our second detox, crossing over to LA from Florida. And I said to him, I said, listen, I was warm and fuzzy in the beginning. I'm not warm and fuzzy. You've got to come off this. You don't want to come off of it and you have to because it's going to kill you. So we're going to take measures to make it happen. And he did. He got sober and he had a 1.5 years after that. And he said to me, he's like, that was brutal, but that's what I needed. I needed to get out of the area. And then he's out. Go ahead.
So I get a lot of questions about the detox. A lot of people are in fear to go through detoxes. I've been through many of them. You have been the right-hand man, so to speak, in your husband's multiple times. What was it like? Was he, when you get through the initial first few weeks and like your mental health starts to come back a little bit, what kind of person was he once he got sober?
He was completely normal until the very last 2 runs. And then his brain was fried. And that's where it gets interesting. So, and I've worked with celebrities. This is what I do. I go on tour buses, I go on yachts, I get people sober on a plane.
Wow.
Everybody's detox different. If you do it right, you don't need to be fearful because you've got enough tools now with Suboxone and gabapentin and clonidine, comfort meds. It can be a smoother detox without all the vomiting and the diarrhea and all that. But you're still going to have night sweats. You're going to have a little, flat affect. You're going to feel a little funky. You're not going to feel yourself yet, but that comes back. You just have to make it through to that point. And we can use L-tyrosine and exercise and, all different kinds of supplements to bring up your dopamine to make you feel better. But if you use long-term, and he did 10 years and the last 4 were microdosing fentanyl at the level of stage 4 cancer patients. When he finally got sober, he had 29 days sober when he died. He was not the same person at all. It was like 2 different people. And he had lucidity points where he was like the same person and then it was gone. So that's the hard part. So the longer you wait, the harder it is. And he refused to use Suboxone. And I think if he would have used Suboxone, his brain would have been more level and he wouldn't have been as decompensating rapidly as he did.
Let me ask you a question. So you're a detox specialist, you are a professional at detoxing. What are your thoughts on Suboxone?
Short term, as a detox, I don't agree with get on Suboxone and stay on it because it still hijacks your brain. So let's use it as a bridge so you don't go from, when you detox off opiates and it's like stepping off a cliff and then you just free fall, right? So imagine if you're stepping off the cliff with Suboxone, you step down, you step down, you step down, you step down. Oh, look, there's the ground. You don't just hit it versus like boom, crash and burn. But once you come down to that ground, let's get walking again. You don't need all these drugs. Like I'm anti-big pharma. So let's do walking and exercise and eating correctly and get your brain firing the way it should. That's going to take time though. And a lot of people, they use drugs 2-3 years and they think, oh, I'm going to be sober tomorrow and feel normal. And I'm like, you've been using 2 or 3 years. Your body's got to reset. You got to give it time.
The bones, they need all those opiates need to come out of those bones. And for all those years, it's painful.
Yep.
But it can be done. I actually went through a detox, not this time sober. I had 3.5 years of sobriety and then I ended up having a relapse. That's a whole nother story. But when I got sober that time, I did a 20-day Suboxone short-term detox taper.
Yep.
I don't remember exactly. I think I started at 1 milligram for 4 days. Then I went to a 0.5 milligram for 4 days. Then I went to 1/4 milligram for 4 days. Then half of that. And then I was done.
That's what we do at Sober on Demand. That's exactly what we do.
You start with 1 milligram?
Depending on the patient, it can go as high as 8. We don't go over 8.
Yeah.
We don't want to start you at 8 and then go to 32. To me, that's stupid. Let's start you at 8 or 6 or 4 or 2 or half.
Yeah.
Just to get you through. And then you're on the other side and then you don't need it.
A doctor a shrink that I was going to, who's an addiction specialist, recommended the 20-day plan. 4. And it worked. Yeah. Listen, I'll be honest, from when I went from day 20 to 21 to 22, 23, it was nothing. But I needed catapress because I had restless leg syndrome.
Yep.
And that just took the anxiety away. And then I actually felt great.
90% of the detox is anxiety because you're waiting for all the symptoms to hit. You're like, okay, I know what's coming next. I'm going to be nauseous. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to have restless legs. I'm going to have night sweats. You know it's coming. So you're sitting there waiting. And then it starts to come and you're like, here it is, and then you magnify it. You're like, oh my God, it's awful. So it's getting your brain to realize it's not as bad as it sounds. So that little bit of Suboxone or that catapress gets you through.
Yes.
And then you're like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, that was easy compared to like, you're going to need this for the rest of your life. I don't agree with that.
I was almost like underwhelmed because I was expecting something so much worse when I was coming off the Suboxone. I'm like, oh, I'm at work. I'm productive at work. I'm fine. Day 21, day 22, off of the Suboxone, that little taper. Do you have experience detoxing people from like barbiturates, like Xanax, alcohol?
We do alcohol really, really well. And we do everything really well. Xanax is a long-term taper. And this is where people think Xanax, you can just quit. Xanax is a step down, step down, step down, step down, step down until you finally get to the very, very end. Most Xanax tapers are a year. And I tell that to people, and we do that for safety because you can have a seizure. We don't want you to have a seizure. We don't want you to die. Xanax is one of the drugs when people say to me, like, what's the worst drug you can get hooked to? And everybody says, oh, it's fentanyl. It's actually, in my opinion, it's Xanax because it's so hard to come off, and the anxiety coming off can put people into a panic attack, which can put you into a heart attack. So it's that thought process. So it's tough. And then when you get into SSRIs and you get into all of that, coming off that stuff, those detoxes, brutal.
Can you walk us through an SSRI detox gone wrong? Like what are the potential, what could happen?
Homicide. Like, and this, your listeners are going to love this. When I see these school shootings and people go, oh, guns, I go, what drug were they on? And they look at me and they say, what big pharma SSRI was that kid on? And 9 times out of 10, they come back and go, that woman was on an SSRI for anxiety or depression. 9 times out of 10, I'm right. And I'm like, okay. Because all of these things, if you watch the Happy commercial, you see the girl, she's on the beach in the bikini in the sun and the hat. It's amazing. And they say, use this drug. And then at the very end, they go, may cause. And you hear this like really, really rapid fire, blah, 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 blah.
Depression, anxiety, killers. They just say it really quick.
Yeah. And I've had a friend whose father retired. He was a police officer, retired like 3 days before Christmas. And he had 3 days off the job. And he was depressed. And they had put him on, I think it was a Prozac, Wellbutrin, one of the depression stuffs. Went out in the front yard, took his revolver, and blew his brains out in the front yard.
Oh my God.
And everybody was like, oh my God, why does that happen? And I said, what drug was he on? And what do you mean? What SSRI was he on? And it comes back almost every time. So is detox on that? Because people just stop. They go, well, I could stop. And then they don't feel right. And that's what happens. You see severe anxiety, you see panic attacks, you see agoraphobia where they can't leave the house. All of those can be byproducts, but also the physical is awful. They have pain in their head, they have eye pain, they have rapid eye issues, they have lighting issues where the light's too bright, they have noise sensitivity. And everyone's going, what's wrong with you? Get back on your meds, get back on your meds. It's the detox. So you can't just stop this stuff. And when people say to me, they're like, well, I went to rehab and I went in on one drug, opiates. And I came out with 17 prescriptions for anxiety and depression. And I'm like,
me.
What the hell?
That's me.
Yes. I'm like, why? What is wrong that they gave you all that shit? And then I sit with somebody and I'm like, well, let's figure out what's wrong with you. Like, why do you need this? And then we go, okay, here are your issues. Let's solve your issues. If we solve your issues, you don't need a depression medication. You don't need an anxiety medication. Like,
do your step work.
And what's causing it? What is causing you to need this?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's really ironic that you're saying all this because I got off Lexapro and Wellbutrin after being on it for 6 years.
That's rough.
Yeah. I tapered myself. I mean, I told my doctor, but I tapered myself off of everything. It was I did it over a year. I tapered myself off of it. And I feel so good.
You probably felt clear.
I feel clear. I feel good. I feel emotion too. And it's okay to feel emotion. That's the thing they block you from, feeling emotion. They don't want to make you unstable. And I'm talking about they, meaning like the people who are prescribing it to you, you're like a delicate little flower when you're coming off of drugs, and they don't want to rock the boat too much because too much emotion may just send you into a relapse, and you may, so.
Well, if you're in treatment, I'm going to tell you why they do that. Because I've been doing this 27 years, and this is why I have my own company. If you're in treatment, they want you to be compliant. If you're angry, agitated, anxious, depressed, or crying, you are not compliant, are you? You're not going from group to group, are you? If you're not in groups, they can't bill for the services. So if we put you on a medication that makes you calm, you become compliant.
No comment.
That is why I stopped working in the addiction treatment rehabs and started creating something that's tailored to a client, because I don't want you on those medications. I want you to function as a human.
Yeah.
If you're sad, that's okay. Let's be sad. Let's talk about it. Why are you sad? And then you talk about it. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not really sad. I'm just agitated. Okay, why are you agitated? We figure out the why, and then you can process your emotions. You're not deregulated.
Yeah, of course.
And then you can be productive.
Hey, you're doing the work on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking, drugs, gambling, sex addiction, all these addictions, these are symptoms. The problem is the problem is really here, right? Yeah. And getting to the root of that. What is causing your depression? What is causing your insecurities? Fear, resentment, you need to get to the core of the issues. And once you do that, then you're able to regulate your own emotions.
Exactly.
And stay stable. Listen, I don't push God on anyone, but I've really been leaning on God a lot lately. And that too helps stable, higher power, let's say. I don't want to scare anyone here, but that helps regulate emotion. You're not trying to control everything all the time. And you're not hypersensitive to things either.
Well, the biggest problem with addiction is people in addiction don't know how to sit with their emotion. So they're always escaping it. And then they get addicted to the meeting with, oh my God, I have a feeling, I got to go to a meeting. And I said, no. Sit down with the feeling and process it and stop running to the next thing so that you don't feel the emotion that you're feeling. And it's always a thing. I'm going to run to another girl or another guy, or I'm going to run to a meeting or a drug.
I can relate to that.
Or gaming or gambling. I have to have that dopamine hit. And with this stupid phone.
Oh, forget it.
It's like you're bored. What do? You doomsday scroll. And then 3 hours later, you're doing the TikTok scroll and you've done nothing. You're still standing in the kitchen trying to make lunch and you're like, it's been 3 hours. And you watched a cat video and somebody fall down the steps and you're like, it's entertaining.
Have you ever detoxed someone from social media?
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
You had a client that you had to detox from. Can you walk us through that?
It's for me, it's more painful than a heroin detox, because it's like, have you seen the video of the kid on the airplane that's 5 years old that they took the iPad from? And he's standing on the seat, the back of the seat, screaming bloody murder in the airplanes. 5 hours of this. That's a social media detox. It's worse. Process addictions are worse than chemical, because chemical, we just take the chemical away, right? We take the heroin away. We take your Lexapro away. Your brain has to reset, right? But a process addiction like sex or gambling or gaming or social media or Amazon Prime it's always there. And your brain's chemicals release like this. They fire more. So what happens is, as they're firing more, it's natural chemical. Your brain just keeps releasing its own natural chemical and it knows it's right there. It wants more. It wants more. Just thinking about posting now releases the chemical. Thinking about it. So your brain, there's nothing for me to take away from you. The chemicals are there. So when I take away the iPad or the social media, your brain is still doing this. It still wants more. And it amps up and then it depletes, and then you crash. And then they're literally on the floor in a fetal position crying that they can't post on Instagram. Literally.
Holy.
Crazy.
Man.
And it's all brain chemistry here. And old school, Gen X is get up, put your big girl panties on and go to work. They're not understanding what's happening right now. Your dopamine just bottomed. Yeah.
How long does it take for someone to come out of that?
Couple days.
It's almost like a drug detox.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So when we do these, we try to do them in a remote location where there's no Wi-Fi. So whatever it is you want, we can't get. We're hiking. We're at the basin of the Grand Canyon. You're not getting Wi-Fi. Here's an analog camera. Take a photo.
Wow.
And then once they're done, they're like, wow, this was amazing. I feel peace. I feel centered. I feel connected again. Because they're not connected. And everything on social media is an illusion. I tell everybody it's an illusion. People are either going, look at my best life, or
oh my God, I can't.
I'm having a worse day. Give me attention. I'm like, it's all attention seeking behavior.
Yeah.
And I post controversial videos, not for attention. I post them so people get information. So I'm doing a whole thing on narcissism right now. And people are like, oh my God, you said that? Yeah, it's controversial. Why not? No one else is saying it. Here it is. So I did a big thing on all these little girls are like, my boyfriend's a narcissist. I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not.
They're throwing that word around left and right.
Yeah. And I told him why. And everyone went, oh. I said, if you're dating a narcissist, you will not post on social media you're dating a narcissist because he'll come for you. Mentally, physically, financially, he's going to come for you. You will not have that video up. So if you say I'm dating a narcissist, guarantee you he's not. And everyone kind of came at me and I'm like, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. So it's like people get into that. Like just arguing on social media becomes an addiction. Like they look forward to who they're going to fight with. And I'm like, really?
The chaos.
Yeah.
Like it's not, you can't live like that. It's not you can, but it's just a torturous lifestyle.
Well, it is because you're looking at it from the outside. Most people that are doing it have trauma and chaos is normal. So they don't have the chaos at work or they don't have the chaos in their relationship. So they're going, I'm uncomfortable. So I'm going to create chaos. So now I feel comfortable. And where can I do that? Where can I be a keyboard commando? Facebook, right? Somebody posts a beautiful picture there in Cancun and you're going, how'd you have money for Cancun? What are you doing there? Why? Because you want to start something. Then that person answers you and now you're like, okay, you say something snarky and you block them and you're like, I won. And you get this dopamine rush, right? And that poor person is trying to answer you going, they blocked me. Now they can't answer you. Now they are frustrated. So now you like have this ping pong of this negative energy. It's like, what? And we're looking at it going, that's so stupid. But they're both getting this push-pull energy off of it.
Yeah.
And then that person who can't answer gets upset. And then maybe they lash out at someone else. And then that person lashes out. It's just this like trickle-down chaos.
It's just like doing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. What is the worst detox you've ever seen? Like what was the worst experience you had with a client and like it was just an unmanageable situation?
Okay, so I'm going to give you two. The worst detox on the planet that trumps heroin is sugar. Sit for that for just 1 minute. I'm going to tell you why. It has the same detox as heroin, the same flat affect, the same restless legs, the same night sweats, the same not being able to sleep, all of it at a lower level, but it's in everything and it's everywhere. So even if you're not taking it, you go to the gas station to get gas and you go in to get a cup of coffee, what do they have? Every product has sugar. You go to the grocery store, you walk in, cakes, cookies, candies is the first thing you see. Everything has sugar. Pasta sauce has sugar. Sugar is the worst detox because you get off it and it's hard to stay off of it. And it's horrible coming off of it. So that's that. But in terms of drugs, I had a gentleman who was on opiates, Xanax, and alcohol. And he had severe mental health. And this is the hard part with detox is you don't know how much mental health someone has. So once we got him off, he was one of 2 clients I've ever had that I would diagnose as a psychopath, a true psychopath, like Dexter stuff. So once we got him sober, I'm like, we need to get him medicated because he's going to be a nuisance to society. That was weird. That was very like odd. But most people coming up, you go through the physical and then it's all mental. It's getting through the mental piece.
Yeah. That's wild. Have you ever had anyone pass away from a detox?
No. We do it so safe and we don't take high risk. So like we don't take everybody. We're very selective on who we work with. Now I've had clients pass away. I've had clients down the line commit. I've had one that got murdered doing a carjacking because he went back out. I've had a couple go on tears, and end up in jail. So we get you sober. We can't guarantee you're going to stay sober because you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's tough.
Do you usually recommend further care after the detox? And what do you recommend if so?
So we do the detox and then we have sober companions for as long as you need. And then I do a 5-day executive reset where I come in and I do the deep dive, trauma therapy, memory reconstruction, like the EMDR stuff. I do performance coaching, all the heavy lifting to get to the why. And then I give you all of the tools. And then we do aftercare. You have sessions with me, you have sessions with your coach, you have sessions with your companion, and we just keep going until you don't need us. And then you call us one day and you're like, you know what? I'm tired of y'all in my life. Have a nice day. Awesome.
That's where you want them to go.
Yeah. We want to be fired. That's everybody. I want you to fire me. That is my goal because I did such a good job. You don't need me.
That's amazing. I love that. And I like that you have that mentality and you're rooting for them. You want them to do well. A lot of these places, you know what the Florida Shuffle is, right?
Oh, yeah.
The body brokering and they're just in it for the money.
I worked at a treatment center and that's how I got into private practice. I was at a treatment center and one day I showed up for work and the gentleman who owned the treatment center had a Bentley and his wife had a Bentley. And we were the working poor. I mean, $40,000 and I have a master's degree and I'm like barely paying my rent. And the owner's wife, we counted one day how many red bottom shoes she's had. And I looked at my coworkers and I'm like, we're pulling 60-hour work weeks. We're not helping anybody because it's 50% is coming back every other month. Something's wrong with this model. And one day the owner threw a notebook at my head because he was mad that I sent a client to a halfway house, the one he didn't want. And I looked at him and I said, I got 2 words for you. And he says, what, fuck you? I said, I quit. And he goes, you can't quit. You can't quit. You need me to pay your rent. And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't need you. I can outdo you. I can build a business, better brand, and I can actually help people. I said, you're not helping anybody. All you're doing is lining your pockets and it's ridiculous. And I left. That's the day I started my company. And from there, we've been helping people. And then I started a school to train people to do what I do. And I have the largest school in the globe right now to train addiction and mental health professionals. And I've had the privilege of going into over 500 treatment centers and revamping the whole thing and going, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how you need to do it. You don't have good care. You don't have good customer service. Your people aren't trained, doing all that. So it's been cool. So him throwing a notebook at my head led to me trying to revolutionize the industry.
Yeah. Talk about where your company's at today. You touched on a few things with sober coaching, aftercare, what you're doing, what your goals are. Talk a little more about the design of the program and even the school too. That's amazing.
Yeah. So for individuals, we do executives and celebrities, and we do what a treatment center, we do in like 10 to 15 days what a treatment center can't do in 30 to 45 because it's privatized. We come to you, wherever you are, one-on-one, detox nurse, doctor, sober companion, therapist. If you want yoga, Pilates, and singing bowls, we'll have it at your doorstep. Whatever you want, we can do it. And then I come in and do the executive reset. We do the heavy lifting. We're not for everybody. You have to want it. We don't take, hey, my kid needs detox. The kid doesn't want it, put him in rehab. The client has to want us. And the training school is called the Addictions Academy. And we have trained 60,000 people. We're in 40 countries. We're in 6 languages. I have staff all over the world. And we have courses from 45 classes, certifications, recovery coaching, intervention, sober companion, counseling, recovery residence administrator. If you want to start a halfway house, if you want to open up a treatment center, we'll show you how to do it. We have mental health coaching, sex addiction, shopping addiction, food addiction, any addiction or mental health you can think of. Autism we have now, autism coaching, we have it. And we're fully accredited.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You've had 60,000 people go through your school?
Yeah. It's been wild.
Wow.
In all the countries, like the country of Curacao, white labeled all of our classes. So the entire country, the government sells our classes as their classes. It was the coolest thing. Like I got a phone call from the president and I'm like, who is this? Like, who am I talking?
Way.
It's wild. Yeah. It's been so cool of what we've been able to do and who's taken our courses and white labeled them. And we have trained the trainers that teach our courses. And we have the largest grant in history for first responders. So I went out and trained all of Alaska's first responders and Florida and New Jersey and some in New York. It was cool. And we have grants for prison reentry. So we actually have a course where we teach guys coming out of prison of how to life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because those people, they want people who go into prison, come out, they want the help. Mm-hmm. But when they go in for a job and they can't get a job because they're a felon, they go back to what they're comfortable with and what they know.
So in that, there's a whole resource guide of where to work, who will hire you. They can get free housing, free food, free medical, free help with a resume. There's so many services that are offered to them they don't even know about because no one's giving it to them. They come out on parole and they're given a sheet that says, call your probation, call your therapist. So we created a whole course on what services are you entitled to? What's free to you? What can you have? And that went gangbusters, went crazy. We did a test pilot in Portland, Oregon, in a prison, and they loved it. And ever since then, we get the call. I had one yesterday. It's like, we're going to put this in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm like, okay, what do you need? Fly up here, teach us how to do it. Okay. And then I go and I teach them how to teach it, and then they go in and do it.
What was the most, I'm sure you have rewarding moments all the time. What was the most rewarding moment? Maybe a client coming back years later who's doing awesome.
I'm sitting at home eating popcorn and I pop the Grammys on, and there's one of my clients receiving a Grammy that should never have been alive. And I'm like, look at you go. That was cool. That was really cool.
That's amazing.
And I'm sitting here going, yep. And I have a client that calls me every Christmas. He's another famous client. Every Christmas, just calls to say, still sober. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. That's so amazing. I want to actually backtrack for 1 second. Have you ever had a client sex addiction, and what was the detox like for that?
I have a lot of clients with sex addiction. Yeah. I'm not normal when I come to with my clients. So most of my guys are cross addicted. And because I deal with that top percent, it's usually cocaine and women, strippers, escorts, girlfriends, what have you. And they come together. So I start with the cocaine. Let's get that under control because you're going to die. You know, if you're doing an 8-ball every couple of days, you're going to have a heart attack. With the girls, I ask them what their goal is. What's your goal with this? What are we doing? You know, is it porn? Is it girls? Is it strippers? What's the goal? And I kind of figure out what they're trying to do. Some of them, it's a power play. And it's, well, you know, if I have a wife and a girlfriend, I'm important. So you're not addicted to sex. You're addicted to power. So I shift the addiction on them. You know, are you 100 times a day? What's going on there? Because that may not be a addiction. That may be an intimacy problem. So I look at it like, why are we doing this first? And see if it's really a sex addiction. Because very few are really sexually addicted. It's usually a problem with intimacy. You know, as an example, or a power play. You know, they have a wife and kids, a beautiful wife and kids and a job, and they have a plane and a car and a yacht. They're bored. And they're like, well, now what? Now I'm going to have a girlfriend. You know, my wife is 40, my girlfriend's 20. That makes me feel important. And then they get bored and then they have another one. And then it gets chaotic because nobody knows anybody and somebody tells on somebody and then the wife finds out. I'm like, okay, now we're in business transaction mode because now we have to tell the wife what's going on. We have to do damage control because you can lose your company or your standing, or if you're political, you're in big trouble. So we have to backtrack it. And then it's like, why are we doing this? Is there trauma? 9 times out of 10, it's trauma and a power play. And then how do we fix it? Like, you're not happy. Why are you not happy?
That is wild.
Yeah.
Do you have a team under you that manages damage control for situations you just talked about? So
I have a couple things. I have 1,000 independent contractors. So if you were in LA and you called me and said, I need a sober companion in an hour, I could have somebody there. You know, so I have 1,000 different people. And then we have a whole team that if things go sideways, we work with the top PR firm in the country. I can call and go, I need you to fix this. They're on retainer. They can hop in and damage control whatever's happening and spin it a certain way. Now, I deal with a lot of rock and roll guys. So a wife and a mistress and a stripper and an adult film star builds their brand versus tears it down. So that kind of stuff, public people go, oh yeah, he's rock and roll. But a political guy, we don't want that out there. So now we have to talk to the wife. We have to talk to the kids. We have to back end it. We have to, push, SEO this way. We have to push a press release that way. Suddenly you're writing a book that you weren't writing. We have to take the heat off of all of this. So yes, it's kind of Olivia Popish from the TV show Scandal. Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah. It takes a village. It takes a village in certain situations. How many clients do you have currently right now? I mean, you're a little higher. You're probably not dealing with people individually still, but.
So we're right about 20 cases right now. So the team is out there doing their thing. I only have 2 on my roster. So I usually keep 2, but I'm concierge. So if they need me, they can reach me, and they're paying a premium for me being
access
available
at all times.
Right. So they know my schedule. They know here I am, I'm booked from this time period that I'm unavailable, but I have a backup. So if they have a crisis, they know who to call for the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then I'm back on deck. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
All right. You don't have to answer this. Are you allowed to share how much it costs to hire you?
Sure. So it depends on what services. Mobile detox is about $3,500 a day. It's reasonable. It's similar to what you'd pay in a detox.
Mm-hmm.
We're out of network. We do take insurance so we can bill on a super bill.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't think it was, I thought it would be more.
It's actually not bad.
No, we try to keep it affordable.
I thought you were going to say 35,000, not 3,500 a day,
Nope.
but go ahead.
Yep. My goal was accessible because we also want you to do a sober companion. So those run about $2,000 a day, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd like a 30-day stay with that because that's where we see the change if you can do it. For me, my 5-day executive reset were $5,000 a day. It's still affordable, but not over the top.
Mm-hmm.
But my concierge program is $20,000. That's completely different. That's if you want access to me on demand.
Mm.
So a little bit different.
Is that $20,000 a day?
$20,000 for 5 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not horrible. Like if you're going to a crisis detox,
Yeah.
in some places you're going to pay more than that.
Yeah. There are programs. And again, I've done training in these places that are like $130,000 a day. They're offering the same thing that the $30,000 treatment center is offering, except they have better linens and maybe a nice view.
Staying at the Four Seasons.
Yeah. And I look at people and I'm like, you know what? We can do this detox in a hotel. We've
Right.
done Canyon Ranch detox. We've done the Four Seasons detox.
Yeah.
We've done the montage. Let's go. It's $1,200 a night for the montage. Let's do it there. You still have the nice, beautiful cliff view. If you're in Laguna Beach, we'll do it there.
Yeah, wherever you want to do it.
We'll go to Nubu Sushi for lunch. Come on, let's go. So, and I do a lot of Puerto Vallarta detoxes too, where they go to Mexico and they're right on the ocean.
Yeah, it
and-
eases it a little bit.
Yeah. It's like we'll walk on the ocean and they like that.
Are you able to share any clients that maybe have given you the okay that you've worked with?
I can't share their names, but I can share their stories.
Yeah.
So I'm allowed to share some stories. One of my more famous ones rented the entire floor of the Beverly Wilshire on Rodeo Drive just so he could walk around in his underwear and smoke weed. And he had a bellman that would stand at the elevator. So if he needed something, the bellman, 24/7 bellman, paid. And there was 3 that would shipped off and on. So he'd come out and he'd go, I want a coffee, and go back into his room. An entire hallway of hotel rooms, just because he wanted to. And I got the call because he had burned through every sober companion company and 10 different rehabs, all high-end rehabs. Nobody wanted to work with this guy. And I got the call. And I'm glad I can cuss on your podcast. So I get there and I show up like I do. I'm like, I come dressed to meet the client. And he's there in his underwear and a hoodie. And he's smoking a blunt. And he looks at me and he said, what the fuck do you want? And I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. And he just looks at me and he looks me up and down and he goes, right in front of the bellman, who didn't bat an eye. And I was like, this is going to be good. And he goes, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm here to help you get sober. And he's like, I'm not getting sober and I don't work with. And I went, this is going to be fun. And I went, oh, good, because I'm not a. So that's a good start. And I just stopped. And I said, so what are we doing today? And he just looked at me and he went, I don't work with bitches. And I'm like, okay, neither do I. And I didn't bat an eye. And he just looked at me and he's like, and he takes a smoke and he's real slowly. And I could see him thinking, I'm like, he's got nowhere to go. It's going to be good. And he's like, fuck off. And I went, sure, no problem. I can do that. But where are we going to start? And he's just standing there. He didn't move. He didn't move because now it's a power play. Now it's a me versus him. And I could just feel the bellman like staring at me like, what is going to happen? And I'm like, I wish I had this on reality TV because this is perfect. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, or standing there and I'm like, I said, you know what? I said, you're going to get sober whether you like it or not. And he's like, I'm not going to work with you. I don't work with women. I said, well, I'm here for 15 days, bro. And I'm paid in advance. So I don't give a fuck who you don't work with. But I'm here. I'm going to sit right down here on the floor. You let me know when you're ready. I sat down on the floor, just playing on my phone. He goes in his room. He's in there like 30 minutes and he comes out. He's like, you're still here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be here. And he's like, well, I'm not working with you. Goes back in his room. And I'm like, here comes the temper tantrum. I'm like, okay. Half an hour later, comes back out. You're still here? I'm like, yeah. Well, I'm not working with you. Fuck off. I'm like, okay. Goes back in his room. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is going to get good. It's going to get better. And
He's about to lose it. Yeah.
Bellman's just looking at me like, the fuck is happening? So he comes out, he puts his hands on his hips and he goes, I told you I'm not working with you. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. But the hotel's public. You can't kick me out of a hotel. my friend. You don't own it. You might have rented the rooms, but you don't own the hallway. I'm gonna sit right here. And he just looks at me and he goes, he crosses his arms and he sticks his little foot out. And he goes, I hate you. I'm like, there's the 5-year-old temper tantrum. And I'm like, I hate you too, but I'm still here. And he goes, fine. And goes, stomps back in the room. And I'm like, and the bellman just looked at me and I went, 5 minutes. I get him in 5 minutes. He comes out and he goes, are you going to sit here all fucking day? And I'm like, until I have to pee. And then I'm going to go pee and come back and sit here the rest of the fucking day. And he goes, fine. You can come in. 2.5 hours it took me. I called the trust fund and I said, day one down. And it was like 5 hours later. And she goes, he let you in the room? I said, yeah. She goes, in 2.5 hours? I said, yeah. She goes, how did you do that? I said, I met him where he was. I mirrored his behavior. He cussed, I cussed. He called me names. I said, okay. I said, I didn't bat an eye. And she's like, the last therapist ran out of there crying. And I said, why? And she goes, well, he called her the C word. And I'm like, yeah, he tried that. It was the first thing he did. And she goes, what did you do? I said, I just said, yeah, probably, but here I am. And he didn't know what to do with that. And she goes, call me tomorrow. 15 days later, I got him sober. And she's like, he's never been sober. This kid's never been sober. This is a trust fund kid, never sober. And she goes, now what? I said, now I bring in a companion, but I have to bring in a female and I have to bring in an alpha. I have to bring in a me. I can't bring in a male. So I brought in a me who was the same personality. He did the same thing to her. And she's like, oh, come on. And she's from the UK. And she's like, really? I heard you did this to Cali. Like, go ahead, bring it. And he brought it. And she goes, let me know when you're done. And he called me. He's like, there are fucking 2 of you on this planet? I'm like, yep. And she was with him 60 days. And he called me and he had houses all over the country. So she would go Hawaii, LA, New York, all over with him. And he called me and he's like, this was actually fun. And I'm like, I told you that, but you had to be, pain in the ass. And here you are. And he was probably one of my hardest cases, but at the end was the most rewarding because he gave me the biggest props. He's like, you took everything I handed you like a champ. And I was like, that's my job. My job's not to react. My job's not to feed into your bullshit. My job's to let you see your bullshit and realize how stupid you sound and then get you sober. That's what I did. I said, I didn't take anything you said personally. Why would I? And he's like, really? He's like, well, I don't really feel that way. I said, I don't care if you do. I don't care what you think of me because your thought of me, how you feel about me is none of my business. My job's to get you sober.
He got triggered and he was trying to, he didn't want to do what he wanted to do what he wanted to do. He wasn't getting his way and he threw a temper tantrum. The young kid came out in him from when he was traumatized as a kid. Yep. And
now keep in mind, this is an actor who's got an agent, a publicist, another agent, a yes person. So, and they all want to be around him. So they'll bring whatever drug or alcohol he wants. And I had to come in and get rid of all of them. Put them all. 15 days. I don't want to see you. I don't want to know you exist. And they were like, well, what if he needs something? I said, what's he going to need at 3 a.m.? M&Ms? We'll give him M&Ms at 3 a.m. He wants the green ones removed. We'll do it for him. Trust me, we don't need you. We got it.
Is this person doing okay now?
Amazing.
Yes. I love that.
Yep. And the one thing I sat with him was what are you going to do? And he goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, you have all the money in the world. What are you going to do with it? Like, who cares? And he just goes, well, I don't need to work. I said, nothing about work. What are you going to do? What mark are you going to leave? And I'm raw with my clients. And I said to him, if you don't do something, you're just another bag with money, bro. What are you going to do? And he just looked at me and he's like, well, that was raw. I'm like, that's my job. And he ended up starting a huge nonprofit that's doing really well. And I said, you have no idea who you are. You act because it's a mask, right? When you act, you're somebody else. They like you. They like you when you act because you're funny and engaging, but that's not who you are. That's a mask. Who are you? And he goes, I have no idea. I said, we're going to figure that out. In 15 days, we did. And then we figured out who he was. And then it was like, what do you want to do now? How do you want people to remember you? The show you played in, who cares? 20 years from now, no one's going to remember that show. They won't. They want, if you do something cool, they'll remember that. And then he's like, well, what could I do? And I'm like, what do you want to do? And then he's like, I can do anything, can't I? I'm like, you have an unlimited budget. You can do anything you want. And he goes, I can literally do anything. Like, then it hit him. And I'm like, you're sitting in a hotel room doing drugs and ordering. Like, that's your solution? Let's do something. And then we did. And then it was gangbusters. It was really cool.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do you want to shout out your book?
Yeah. So I've got 2 I Married a Junkie books. This is the first one we wrote. So it's more mild. The second one is, well, when Tim passed away, I found a bunch of the stories we were writing this in his email that I didn't know. So the opener of this blew my mind. It is absolutely hilarious. He was an entertainer, so it's funny. You'll relate to it. We're on a plane to Alaska from Florida. So with a stopover in Arizona Seattle, and then Alaska. And he's telling the story of how he woke up and he bought 40 bags of heroin to go on this trip. And by the time we're flying over Alaska, he's out of heroin. And he puts himself into precipitated withdrawal at 33,000 feet in first class. And he tells it in a very funny, entertaining manner. But I had no idea. I'm sitting next to him in first class. And he's throwing up in a magazine. So if you want to hear like the horror stories of heroin withdrawal, he did it at 33,000 feet and had done 40 bags of heroin from the time we left Florida to the time we were flying over Alaska, which is like a 9-hour, 10-hour window.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
His habit was hellacious. Out of all the clients I've ever had, I've only ever had one other client that could do the amount of drugs he did. Like it was hellacious.
How much was he spending a day on drugs?
He was spending $1 million a year. When I did the math, it was $1 million a year on drugs.
Your husband was spending $1 million
Yes.
on drugs a year.
Fentanyl was at the end, he was doing about $1,000 a day of fentanyl. Easy.
Can you walk us really quick through the day before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah.
That he passed?
Yeah. So he went to visit a friend. So he woke up. Okay. In 2019, I asked for a divorce because I was like, this is just insanity. I'm done. I can't. And then COVID hit. And then it was like, I can't get a divorce. I can't file. I can't get to court. I can't. So he's like, listen, everything is going to go crazy. Let's just buy a house. We'll split it and we'll have separate ends of the house. That's what we did. So he had one house with his 2 dogs. I had the other side with my dog. And about halfway through COVID, he looks at me and goes, I'm not going to divorce you. I'm not going to sign the papers. And I said, well, why not? And he's like, I don't want a divorce because he's access to money. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm cutting you off of everything. You have nothing money-wise, except a tiny little like allowance because he wasn't touring because of COVID. And that was it. So I kept saying, I really want to divorce you, but I can't just give you a bunch of money. You're going to overdose. So I went to an attorney and I said, how do I do this safely and put money for him in a trust that he has to be sober for? Attorney said, you can't. He's your husband. He's not your son. Can't. So I said, if I divorce him and he signs the papers, he's got to get a chunk of money. He'll be dead in 30 days. That chunk of money. So I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't know what to do. And it's COVID. So I just kind of waited it out. And finally I said to him, I'm going to take a trip. I'm going to Connecticut. I'm going to be gone for like 2 weeks. And he was having some pain in his side. And I said, what's going on? He's like, I don't know, I ulcer, whatever. So I left and I called him and he didn't sound right. I'm like, you don't sound right. He said, well, I have a lot of pain. I'm like, well, go to the ER. Didn't go. I come back and he's pale white and his entire stomach is swollen. And I looked at him and I'm like, you need to go to the ER. I think you're bleeding internally. And no, I'm fine. So I took a nap. And as I was sleeping, you know how you have that like sense of just wake up, something's bad? Mm-hmm. I woke up and I hear thud and he fell. So I called 911. He goes to the ER and he had lost so much blood at this point and they didn't know what it was. And they ended up, he had a gash on his head from where he fell. So they thought that that was the primary problem. And I kept saying, no, something else is wrong. So they went to stitch up his forehead and he went into shock. So they put on like the mask over him, had to incubate him. They found out that his hepatic artery, the artery that goes from the gallbladder to the liver, bust because there was a gallstone that went through that cut it. So what I was seeing was the gallstone was stuck and it was a slow bleed. So it was bleeding and then it tore. So they put him into surgery and as they brought him out, they said 1% of the population survives the surgery. He survived it. He went to the ICU. He's in the ICU and they gave him liquid Dilaudid. And he's like, I got to get out of here. Why? And he's like, I'm in detox. Like, you're in detox and they're giving you liquid Dilaudid? Like, how much drugs are you really using? And he wouldn't tell me. And I'm like, well, I'm not signing your ass out. You're in ICU. I don't know how to take care of you. So stay here. So he stayed for 5 days and then he pulled all his tubes out. He's like, I'm out. And they had made me sign end of death papers because they thought he was dying. And he comes home And I'm like, well, you need to get sober. And you got to have your gallbladder out because it's full of gallstones, so this doesn't happen. And no more fatty food, no more nothing. So we're eating, organic. We're doing the whole thing. And I'm working. I'm seeing clients. I'm traveling. And he's getting better, what I think. But he's still using opiates. I'm like, you have to come off opiates. You have to get sober. So finally, I said to him, I can't do this anymore. You're still using. You're not listening. You're eating decent, but you're not getting your gallbladder out. And I said, how much you're really using? And that's when he told me how much fentanyl he was doing. And I'm like, I don't know where you're getting the money. I don't know how you're getting the money. I don't want to know how you're getting the money, period. But I want a divorce. I'm done. And he goes, I got to get sober. So he got sober and he did it hardcore, throwing up all over everything. I tried the detox nurse and doctor. He wouldn't do it. And then he's 29 days clean. And on the 29th day, he says to me, he's like, I want to go out for sushi. So we went out, we had sushi, him and his son and I. And he goes, I'm going to go over to Naples and see my friend. And I'm like, okay, which was odd for him. And he goes, I'll be back in a couple days. All right. So he gets in the car, he starts going over and he calls me. And it was the weirdest conversation. He was happy, like happy. And I'm like, weird conversation. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to grant your divorce. What? Finally? He goes, get the papers ready. I'll sign the paper to sell the house and I'll sign the divorce paper. Okay. Now keep in mind, I've got this massive beach house. I've got 5 cars and a tour bus in my driveway. And I'm like exhausted paying for everything and footing everyone's bill. So this is like relief. I don't have to pay for it anymore. Great. So I'm printing everything out. I talked to him at like 9:10 and he's super happy. And I'm like, you sure you're all right? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's great. My friend is here. I heard his friend on the background. Okay, talk to you tomorrow. Shuts his phone off, whatever. He calls me about 9:25 and it sounded like his phone was in his pocket, which isn't odd. Sometimes that would happen. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then the next morning I text him at like 7:30. I didn't hear a thing. Text him at 8 and I'm sitting there and I'm like, something's wrong. He was real happy last night. He granted my divorce. This is not his behavior. He's only 29 days sober. The next call I get is his friend screaming and I couldn't hear a damn thing. I'm like, I can't understand you. And he's like, the door's locked. I can't get in. He's not answering the door. I knew he was dead. I knew. And I was like, break the door down. And his friend is kind of bougie. He's like, I'm not breaking my door down. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Get a key, get a butter knife, pop the lock, do something. And his friend is kind of like in a panic. So I'm walking him through the steps. So he goes, I'm just going to call the police. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you need to do, but get the door open. So he calls the police. They walk in. I hear his friend screaming and the officer picks up the phone. I'm like, he's passed, isn't he? He goes, yeah. I'm like, what's the time of death? And he says, 9:25. Like he had just called me and then died. And I said, are there drugs on the scene? He said, no. I said, really? No drugs. I said, what's it look like in your opinion? He goes, he's on the floor, on his knees with his head tilted back, vomit everywhere. He goes, it looks like a heart attack. And I said, really? That's odd. I said, okay. So I come to find out, and by the way, I forgot this part. On the way to his friend's house, he had stopped at McDonald's and he had a Big Mac, large fries, and a Coca-Cola. Now, remember, he hasn't had fat or salt in 6 months. So I called my friend and I'm like, what would cause a heart attack? And I gave him this scenario. And he said, with gallstones, you can't eat McDonald's. And all of that together, just having surgery, just gotten sober, driven 5 hours, the stress of driving all at once probably taxed his heart. His heart just exploded. And I was like, wow, long-term drug use, 29 days sober. Yeah.
But he died sober.
He died sober. And I think he knew something was wrong because when I went through his emails, there's a story in that second book about he had the 29 days sober and he did a line of coke in that 29 days. And because his thought process was, well, if I can't do fentanyl, I'll go back to coke. After 10 years, I'm not doing coke. This is how the addicted brain was. And during that period, he writes in the book that he felt a pop in his artery or his heart, or he's not sure. Something was off. And that was like 12 hours before he died. Oh. So it's like, I think he knew something was wrong. So he went to Naples so he wouldn't die in the house because his son lived in the mother-in-law suite and we would find him. And I think he did that for me. But yeah, the whole thing was weird. And then you get the call. Because remember, I went 10 years with him overdosing and police calling. And I always thought it was the end of death call. Cops calling, you Mrs. Estes. And you're like, yeah, you're waiting for the, DOA. Like, come pick up your husband. Where is he? He's in jail. He's in, he's in the hospital or he's in a car crash, here, come get him. So this was the call you expect, but you don't want. And then you get the call and it all gets quiet.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh boy, and then it's quiet for a while. And then you're like, now what? What's next? So
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Where can listeners find you?
So soberondemand.com. We're there. They can find us at the Addictions Academy. They can Google me, Cali Estes. I'm everywhere. Or on Amazon. There's 6 different books they can choose from. Yeah. I've been busy.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for making the drive. Your story, what you do is all amazing, and it's going to help a lot of people.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.